bring in Mike Florio. I'll get to your phone calls, by the way, 877-3DP show. Email address dp@danpatrick.com. You can catch Pro Football Talk on NBCSN every weekday at 5:30 Eastern. Let me first start with the Buffalo Bills situation. What's plan B, Mike, if they can't play the game this Sunday against the Jets?
They're exploring, Dan, the possibility of moving it to Sunday night, Monday night, even Tuesday night. Remember, we did that several years ago when the blizzard hit Philadelphia. A Sunday night game between the Eagles and the Vikings got moved to Tuesday night. So all options on the table. Trying to figure out, I think, first and foremost, the safety of everyone involved. You want people to be able to get to the stadium safely. You want them to be able to actually show up for the game and get value for the tickets they've purchased. And you also want the Bills to be able to practice. They haven't been able to practice yet. I think it would be unprecedented for a team to show up for a game without having practiced all week. So I think all of those considerations come into play. Ultimately, they're going to make every effort to play the game in Buffalo. There needs to be a payoff for what the folks up there have dealt with this week, and the idea of moving the game somewhere else I just don't think is acceptable to anyone.
What's the worst-case scenario?
Boy, that's a great question. I think the worst-case scenario for folks in Buffalo would be seeing that game played somewhere else, whether it's Tuesday night at MetLife Stadium, move it to Toronto, something along those lines. That just doesn't work out for anybody. We saw that happen 4 years ago in Minnesota when the roof of the Metrodome caved in and the Vikings and the Giants had to play in Detroit. It just doesn't make sense. And I think that would be the worst-case scenario, is having to move it to another location.
You had a post on Pro Football Talk about an hour ago. It says, could Gruden be one and done in Washington? Where's this coming from?
Well, I think it's just coming from looking at what's out there and reading the tea leaves and looking at the dysfunction that's playing out press conference after press conference this week, the back and forth between Jay Gruden and RG3. And when Gruden comes out yesterday and tells reporters, well, I probably went too far and I did too, that tells me somebody smacked him down behind the scenes. And I'd love to know what's going on behind the scenes between Gruden and Griffin and GM Bruce Allen and owner Daniel Snyder. And we're wired to think that coaches don't get fired after only 1 year. Each of the last 3 years there's been a coach in the NFL fired after 1 year on the job. It's hardly unprecedented. Snyder did it to Marty Schottenheimer back in 2001. I think we have to look at what's going on in Washington and realize it's untenable going forward. So what does that mean? Griffin gone, Gruden gone, both? But I don't see both coming back.
I'm just trying to figure out why everybody talks in Washington. And if you look at any solid, sustainable franchise, you don't have this.
Well, but you hit the nail on the head. Solid, sustainable franchises know how to deal with their people in a way that keeps this stuff from happening. First of all, you have people there who aren't inclined to go out into the media and say things that they shouldn't say, who know how to deal with those situations, who know how to deal behind the scenes on how to get everyone on the same page, how to get along. And when you throw losing on top of it, I think we see the worst of the personalities come out and the worst of the ability or inability of the organization to figure out how to make this all function the right way.
Who's less likely to return next year, Jay Gruden or RG3?
I think between the two, it's probably Jay Gruden, because Griffin's under contract for next year at $3.2 million, fully guaranteed, whether he's on the team or not. And I haven't seen any indication that Daniel Snyder has either fallen out of love with Griffin as a player or is willing to admit that it was a mistake to give up 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick to get him in 2012.
He's Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com. You can watch him every night at 5:30 Eastern on Pro Football Talk on NBCSN. The situation with Marshawn Lynch, I don't know if it's $50,000 or $100,000, but the point is he's being fined for not talking to the media.
It's $100,000. Now, what happened was there was a $50,000 fine last year. He appealed it, and the end result was the NFL suspended the $50,000, but told him, if you fail to cooperate in the future, the $50,000 is being reinstated, and we're going to hit you for another $50,000. So it's $100,000 total. The new fine is $50,000, but the old fine has been enforced.
Everybody has to talk after a game or after practice. Like, what's the media availability? What's the requirement for Marshawn Lynch by the NFL?
For star players, it's simple. You have to talk after the game. You have to be available to reporters after the game, and then once during the week for a star player. For everybody else, there's locker room availability where reporters can come in for 45 minutes and they can pretty much talk to anybody they want. And presumably, if somebody asks you a question, you're expected to acknowledge their presence. And you don't have to. Here's the thing: you don't have to say anything profound. You don't have to even be responsive. We saw RG3 yesterday with that goofy going to San Francisco. We've seen Bill Belichick over and over again. You ask him a question, he answers a completely different question. You don't have to say any specific thing. You just have to say something. So it isn't a high bar. You just have to be there, and you have to respond, and you can say pretty much whatever you want. You just have to be responsive, and you have to be available, and it's part of the job. It's part of the reason why these guys are in position to make the money they make, because people care about what they do. People want to hear what they have to say, and like it or not, that's just what the policy is.
Yeah, but if Marshawn Lynch goes there and doesn't say anything, then he'll be mocked for not saying anything, like Belichick is mocked for not saying anything. So it seems like a no-win situation for Marshawn Lynch. He just doesn't want to talk to the media, doesn't enjoy it, doesn't trust them. Shouldn't there be something that allows you to not do something like that? Does he need a doctor's note that says, like Ricky Williams had, where, I can't talk to the media?
I mean, if you do have some sort of diagnosable social anxiety disorder or some other mental or emotional condition, I assume you can seek an accommodation for that if you can establish it. And I can't talk to these people. I can't talk in group settings. Is there some other way we can do this? And what Lynch did on Sunday, he shot out of the locker room, went to the bus, and he called a couple of people who work for NFL media and talked to them. So maybe there is another way to do this, but you have to be willing at that point, and this creates a completely separate track. You acknowledge you've got some sort of problem, and, there's still a stigma. There shouldn't be. There's still a stigma when somebody has an issue like that, and maybe Marshawn Lynch just doesn't want to deal with that either.
LeGarrette Blount ends up with the Patriots? Where did that come from?
Well, it comes from the last time they played the Colts. Not this time when Jonas Gray had officially 201 yards and 4 touchdowns, but back in January when Blount had 166 and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he was Jonas Gray before Jonas Gray. What I don't understand is how you keep all these guys happy. Bill Belichick uniquely knows how to do that. 1 week it's Jonas Gray, 1 week it's Tom Brady, 1 week it's LeGarrette Blount, 1 week it's this guy. And that's what's amazing about the Patriots. What team has a franchise quarterback, Hall of Famer, who is perfectly fine with handing the ball off 38 times to the same guy? And you never hear any complaint, any gripe, anything off the record. Belichick knows how to get these guys to accept their role, accept the game plan, and he'll have Jonas Gray and all the other running backs accept LeGarrette Blount. And if Blount's unhappy there, I think he deals with it differently than how he was unhappy in Pittsburgh.
Didn't LeGarrette Blount quit on the Steelers?
Well, it sure looks like he did. It sure looks like he did, and there were concerns of selfishness. You have players calling him out on the record after he walked away. But, I think the reason he wasn't back in New England wasn't about the way he behaved there. I think it was about his financial expectations. And I don't think Bill Belichick will mess around with a guy. Hey, any of that crap goes on here, you're going to be gone as quickly as you were gone from the Steelers.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, see you, buddy.
That's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, ProFootballTalk.com, and on NBCSN.